All right. So, welcome, Ian, to a Curious Yogi podcast.
Thank you for having me, Bobby. I'm very excited, and thank you for doing the great work you do in the world.
Thank you. And as I was just mentioning before we started recording, I have been crushing through your book, which is not, it's like a life's work. I know it took you 10 years. He's got it here in the
Yeah,
video. 10 years to
yeah.
write. It's kind of
hmm
your magnus opus. Like, it's a real manual, this book.
Yes, yes.
And we're going to get into it because I have so many questions that I want to ask you and like dive into because I think there's so much wisdom there for us. But in the acknowledgments, you quote your hero, Joseph Campbell, and he says this beautiful line, "From sacrifice comes bliss." And I'm
Yes,
wondering if we can start there.
sure. God, Joseph Campbell is, by the way, my biggest influence, and I find that many people in the younger generation don't pick up his work. So if you don't know Joseph Campbell, definitely look him up. He was very influential in my life just really quickly because when I first started university, he was on a television series called PBS. PBS, sorry, was the channel, and it was called Power of Myth. And it really influenced basically my study of yoga way back then. So he's an incredible influence in my life. So he talks about one of the segments in that PBS special is called From Sacrifice Comes Bliss. And it's really interesting that actually I have a tattoo that says Savage Bliss on my arm with a wolf.
Cool.
And I think about one of the best ways to think about this is just life in general, like, is that so many ancient cultures realize that at a certain point in your life, it's about you, but then your life becomes about dedicating yourself to the next generation, right? So when you're younger, it's about you and what your goals are. And then once you become a parent, it's actually the process of fading and taking care of physically breaking down yourself, of becoming the older generation, but also leaving a legacy of caring for somebody. And that is so much of what life is really about, is that there's so much joy in parenting. It's a sacrifice, 100%, but there's so much bliss that comes from it. And once you see that in parenting, it's in childbirth. When I watch mothers giving birth, it's incredibly painful, and there's, I wouldn't say sacrificing their body, but there's a lot of pain that you have to go through. But through that pain comes the most beautiful experience on the other side. And what Joseph Campbell talks about, it's in a seed. A seed will decompose and its proteins will go into the ground and become a new shoot that comes up. And yeah, so basically, I mentioned in reference to this book because just real short stories. I got injured almost 26 years ago doing yoga, and I just said, I really feel there's a smarter way. Oh, I just want to rehab myself, and I learned other ways of doing yoga. And I realized that there was a lot of gaps in how we could be doing things better with the physical asana practice. I basically, when I say sacrifice, I don't know, for decades, literally decades of my life, I spent time just in my basement, moving my fingers around, studying, like just really dedicating my life to how can we innovate this physical asana yoga practice to reduce the risk of injury and increase the benefits. So I basically sacrificed a lot of my life, my time, really. I don't know if sacrifice is the right word. It's just the context. Like I joyfully did it. But on the other side, there's a bliss that comes to it because I get to help people make their bodies last and function longer and to help them have more embodied physiological tools so they can find joy.
Beautiful. And I think it's so amazing the way that you write the book and how you've developed your own language even for how to literally optimize not only our asana practice, but all of our movement that we do in life. And I
hmm
just want to start with this like incredible theory, which as you were writing in the book and I'm reading it, I'm like, this makes so much sense, but I'd never heard it in this language before. Can you talk a little bit about this dynamic unifying opposition and using the myofascial tuning? Like a little bit about
Sure.
what that is?
Yes. Basically, dynamic unifying opposition stands for, the acronym is DUO. And maybe I can do a 2-for-1 and explain from my knee injury how I actually start having insights into this. And maybe to preface it, one of the hard issues that I have in the book and presenting this work, which is I don't even use the term alignment anymore, but is that people think, oh, I've already studied yoga, I already know triangle pose. And I'm like, yeah, but there's actually an more optimal way of doing it if your goal is maximum joint health, size stretch in the places where you want it, and stability as well. Short story is I got a knee injury doing Ashtanga yoga. I got an adjustment from Patabi Joyce. Again, one of my points about this, I want to be clear, is I'm not blaming him. I never use the language, he injured me. I was an uneducated yoga student, and I willingly participated in an adjustment that had a profound effect on my knee. I couldn't walk for about 4 or 5 months. I didn't even know if I'd be able to walk, let alone do yoga. But I don't know if you get my point here, but just to be clear on this, what I realized is that yoga students need to be educated, not just the teachers, because yoga teachers, frankly, can't see you and they don't know your body history. And so basically, we think yoga is a spiritual pursuit. I actually wrote a whole book on the Yoga Sutras. It's still sitting on Google Docs because I realized that, like, what I'm answering here, I know it's not exactly your question, but just to get at this, is I realized that if you actually study how to do the physical asana practice well, there is a spiritual side of that, because if you don't study it well, you're actually violating the first yama, which is ahimsa. You're actually harming yourself and you don't know it. So without going too far down that direction, back to what duo is, I have a hard time explaining to people that they actually even need this work. Okay, so that was a little bit of a lateral answer to your question, but to answer what exactly duo is, it stands for dynamic unifying opposition. I got injured, so I had to do, basically after a certain amount of time, like 8 months, I could start to do asana again. And then there was a point where I'm like, okay, I can start to do poses that are like pigeon poses that put a lot of stress on my knee. My damage was done to my lateral collateral ligament. So any type of bending and rotational stress. Okay, so it's called varus knee stress. You'll learn in the book where the knee, the distal end of the tibia of the shin bone gets pushed in toward the midline. That killed that ligament. So I just had to really stabilize my knee. There's pictures of it in the book. And I put a strap around my knee so it would not move and it stayed stable. And then I would anchor my shin bone down. Let's say I'm doing pigeon pose, right foot forward. I know most people are listening to this on audio, but just imagine doing pigeon pose with your right foot forward. And what I could not do was bring my chest to the floor. And what I realized is that in the intention of bringing my chest to the floor, I was actually taking the stretch away from my glute maximus muscle and my piriformis muscle, the muscles I was trying to stretch. Basically, because as I brought my chest to the floor, I know it's a little bit hard to see if you're just listening, or hard to understand if you're just listening, but the attachment closest to my sacrum was moving closer to the attachment on my thigh. Okay, I'll say that slow for people listening to understand. Basically, I wasn't pulling in two different directions on that to get the most stretch. So instead of bringing my chest to the floor, the other thing about that is it put a lot of pressure on my knee, so I couldn't do it. So instead I kept my torso vertical, and instead of bringing my chest to the floor, I took my hands out in front of me and I pushed my hip back about, when I say in inches, like literally 5 inches, so like 15 centimeters, I would push back fairly far. And by doing that, my hips didn't sink as low to the floor, my chest didn't sink as low to the floor, but I got way more stretch. And I realized that muscles have what we call distal and proximal ends, and most people are letting the distal ends move towards the proximal. They're basically, to get a stretch, the fastest way I can say it is, instead of pulling a rope to create a tug of war, they're pushing a rope and taking the tension away. And as a trade-off, they get what I call endpoint yoga. They're bringing the chest closer to the floor, but they're getting less stretch. So to put a bow on all this, when you anchor the distal, I hope people know that means farthest away from the center of the body, and pull the proximal back, the way you would stretch a slingshot to create tension on the elastic, that's duo. What most people do, if we just keep using the slingshot analogy, is letting the part where you would hold the leather part where the rock would be, they're actually allowing that to move closer uh,
Hmm.
at the proximal end towards the distal, and they're taking the tension away. But that's actually what gives them that's what allows people to get their chins on shins, to bind in the poses, and to to do all these things that are judging poses by their endpoints, what they look
Mm.
like, but they're actually taking the stretch away. So I had to learn that. And once I saw that, I realized, oh my God, there's a whole literacy gap in how we're actually doing yoga. And so one of the things I started to have to do to train people is to engage certain muscles to pull back and create tension in all different directions. So now I'm just going to summarize. That's a little bit about how I discovered duo, but what duo is. It's actually a line of force between point A and point B. So if I'm doing pigeon pose, it's going to be between my right knee and my right sit bone. And what I need to do is to pull those in opposition. When I create that vector of force, it creates more. There's three S's: stretch, stability, and space. Space means less compression in my joints. My hip joints weren't so compressed. My spine wasn't so compressed. I got more stretch in my hip exactly where I wanted it. And I was way more stable. And there's a whole feeling to it. So basically, the tagline for the book is yoga is a feeling, not just a shape. And so many people are interested in making shapes that they miss the feeling they're looking for. And the feeling is that stretch precisely where you want it, and the stability and the spaciousness in your joints and in the breath. And duo is how we create that.
Mm, beautiful. So I'm kind of thinking to me how when we look at like the different types of bodies, what you talk about in the book, and you
Hmm.
see people that are quite flexible or even hypermobile, and there's this kind of sense of sort of hanging in the joints. Would this be the sort of counter to hanging in the joints, like because you're creating space and with that dynamic tension rather than hanging in a stretch?
Yes, I mean, I know I might, whenever I use other people's ways of breaking things down, I might
Mm,
conflate things a little bit. So
hmm.
I'm being careful of doing that. But I'd say, generally speaking, yes, it should reduce the amount of hanging in the joints. Basically, in one sense, I know we got right into technical conversations, and I hope this makes sense for people listening. But in one sense, if you just imagine this, that one of the things I'm trying to fix is people are doing one-dimensional yoga. Okay, so what are three dimensions? Just real quick, so you can visualize it. There's up and down, left and right, side to side. Okay, that people are mostly doing yoga by going from up to down. Let's say you're doing Paschimottanasana, where you just fold over, they're just dropping their head. Let's say that you are, what was your example of hanging the joints? What pose were you thinking about?
I was
Did you
actually
have one
thinking
there?
of malasana, like yogi squat.
Malasana, yeah. Okay, Malasana. Yeah, so Malasana, if you're just squatting down, again, if you can't imagine that, you're just squatting like you're waiting at a bus stop in Bangkok or something. They squat a lot, those people, or how you drink chai in a lot of places in India, or go to the bathroom. So, yeah, if you just passively, um, I mean, that's an interesting one because it's not so much about stretching, but yeah, if I just passively let the hips sink down, then I have lost all the tension. So what I would advise people to do if you're doing Malasana is to think about, not just, if you think about where your head is and to think about where your hips are, to not just think about sinking from your head toward your hips, but to actually think about, basically it's like imagining an elastic between your feet and your head, and to really keep your spine elongated at the same time. Your
Mm,
shoulders elongate all the time. It's basically the art of living as if you're always have elastics around you. You got to keep those expanded,
like that. I
which
like
will
the
to your answer, reduce this concept of hanging in the joints. I mean, more, I don't look at it like from a negative. I'm looking at it from a positive, meaning that in your joints, like this, I just really want to get clear. This is what has helped me in the book, is I've had so much chance to get clear about my language, and that is the real big issue is load. Load means weight, just if everyone needs a grade 10 physics refresher. And that when you put a load on the body, there is stress on your joints. And if you don't use duo by pulling things one way, then what happens is, sorry, finish that sentence, by pulling things one way and pressing out another way, okay? If you use uno, which is just sinking down, unidirectional, no opposition. So there's duo, two directions. uno, from top to bottom sinking, then what happens is, the real short summary is that the load is concentrated on a smaller area. There's more pressure in a smaller area. With duo, the load is spread out over multiple joints,
Mm.
and then they're more stable and there's less wear and tear. There's more wear and repair, we call it. And that's one of the things that I am really trying to get across in the yoga approach. Sometimes when I describe this approach to yoga, I'm actually use the term joint first yoga, which people think, oh, you're talking about marijuana yoga. I'm like, no, I'm not an advocate for that. I'm saying you need to think about, are your joints stable, and create a stretch around that. But many stretches, people don't realize it. There's a literacy gap, but they're actually destabilizing the joints, and they're putting pressure in concentrated areas in their joints. And Duo helps to rectify that.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you again about the three S's because I'm feeling
Okay.
like it makes sense. The spacious, the space, creating space and more volume. To me, that seems like making your body that elastic. And then what were the other two?
Okay. So there's three S's. There's stretch.
Stretch.
Okay. And when I say stretch, I'll tell you the three things, and then we can kind of go deep
Okay.
into each one of them. Stretch, we should do the next, stability and space. Okay. So duo, again, let me just recap. Duo is a line of force between point A and point B, which a yogi will press upon to create more stretch, stability, and space.
Mm.
Okay. Now, stretch means you'll get the stretch in exactly the place where you want it. And I mean, the code word really here is the word tension. Now, people think of tension as a bad thing, and tension is a bad thing mentally if you're talking about mental stress, but mechanical tension is what yogis are looking for. So I just want to be clear in the language. Summary, tension equals stretch, period. Don't get stressed out when you hear the word tension. Don't let it cause you mental tension. Okay, so when I say tension, I mean in physics. Okay, so to create tension, it's a force. And this is one of the things I'm trying to do in yoga is move yoga, asana, from geometry to physics.
Mm.
Geometry, the system that we have is alignment that we've inherited, but alignment is flawed a lot of times because it's based on aesthetics. The people who created alignment were the photographers. All the people that say your shin must be parallel to the floor, you're in Warrior Two, or sorry, perpendicular to the floor in Warrior Two. The arms must be parallel in wheel pose. The arms must be parallel to the floor in Warrior Two. Like, these people are the photographers, and that is geometry. To get the stretch, you actually need to move into physics, which is about force transfer. You need to, again, like, I can't pull a slingshot unless I pull my left hand forward, my right hand back. It actually takes force. It's mass times acceleration. I have to accelerate my left hand forward and my right hand back. And the more force I have there between those two places, point A and point B, then the more tension will be on the elastic, the further my rock will go. So what I'm asking people to do when they do the stretch is to work on that, is to pull these places apart and to isolate the stretch in those places, even if it takes you further away from, let's say you're doing like a Paschimottanasana, a forward fold, even if it means your chin's not as far to your shin, just keep working on that isolation to get the stretch. Okay, so that's the first S. I think it's kind of obvious, but the real beautiful thing about it is it really gets it into the precise place you're looking for. And that's what people really feel when they do this, is like, oh my God, wow, this is exactly where I want to feel the stretch. And what people who've done this work with me over Duo is like, oh, I was just kind of sort of feeling it all over the place, but wow, now I'm really isolating it. Okay. So next S, to move into that one, if you want to go that direction, is stability. Now, this is a huge one for me because I listen to a lot of podcasts. Gabrielle Lyons, I was listening to Dr. Gannett, I think he was on there, and he's talking about, like, she was asking him all these questions like, is yoga good? He's like, no, I don't recommend yoga. Peter Attia is actually, to be honest with you, I don't know if you know Peter Attia, the doctor, but I wrote this book. People are like, who did you write this for? I'm like, I wrote this book. My target was Peter Attia. I know that he will love this. And one of the things he talks about is that Pilates is really good because it stabilizes people, but yoga is not good for stability. And that's what I want to tell him, is that's the way a lot of people practice. But there's a new game in town. And when you do it with duo, you will add more stability, because what these people are seeing that really care about the body is that pushing yourself to maximum end range in your joints can be dangerous, and specifically not neurologically wiring yourself to have more stability in your joints, in your spine, in your knees is a real dangerous game. And Pilates will do that for you. It will make you stay stable. And strength training, all this stuff, it makes you stay stable. But there's a way of doing yoga where you will stabilize. And just, it's obviously a long conversation, but, let people find the work and do it. But just to just kind of keep it at a sample platter level here is that when you pull to create more stretch, as a byproduct, you'll actually make yourself more stable, because the tension that you create in the muscles will keep you suspended. I'll just plant a flag on a term. Maybe we can come back to it, but I won't talk about it now. There's a term from a teacher of mine I learned, Tom Myers, way back in 2001, called tensegrity. You will have more tensegrity. The tension on the muscles will keep the intense integrity of the structure. Again, we can talk about that later, but if people are interested, look up tensegrity, Tom Myers, and you'll get a better sense of what I'm talking about. So you get more stability is the next one. And the last one is space. And what I mean by space is that it's exactly, I can make this one really simple because I already talked about it. Basically, what space means is that in your joints, like, let's see, okay, I'm going to take my knuckles together. This is going to be, let's say, L4, L5. Okay, so people are watching, just imagine two knuckles, that are listening, just imagine two knuckles together. And then I'm going to start to turn one, and then I'm going to tilt it. So all the compression is going to go on my right and left knuckles, okay, as I turn. And that's now what I'm doing, okay, just describing it to people who are listening, is I'm going to do a twist standing up. And if I let my hip move up towards, just making sure you see this, towards my shoulder, and then I do a twist, then all the compression is going to go on my right side here in my spine. It's going to be exactly the same thing. That's uno, where the attachments are in my left hip are lifting up towards my left shoulder. So I need to press those down to get more stretch in my obliques and my hips. Hope you can see that. Then that will actually, now here's the key point. If you didn't understand all of that, even if that didn't make sense, like what you're doing is you're actually dispersing the load over multiple joints of my spine rather than concentrating that one little spot on the spine. So that's unfortunately I say all that is complicated, dispersing loads versus concentrating, and space just starts with S, so we use space. There's another part of the S to finish this one, and it's breathing space. When you have more duo in your body, your diaphragm works better, your intercostals work better, you have more breathing space as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for summing those up. And definitely for the listeners, I mean, if we have time, we can talk about it. But tensegrity, when I read that in your book, I went down a whole rabbit hole.
Okay.
It's such an
Is that your first time
interesting.
hearing that term?
Yeah, definitely. So it was
Okay.
really great. But I just want to touch back on something that you briefly said, and that was about moving the yoga practice from geometry into physics. And it made me think about a part in your book where you talked about this exactly, and you talked about a blind student that you had. I'm wondering if you can share that story.
Sure. Actually, there's a first part of the book. So the book has three parts, okay? So the first part is called Yoga is a Feeling, Not Just a Shape. The second part is called Soulful Science. So basically, that is about stuff about breathing. There's so much breathing physiology in there. I studied breathing anatomy and physiology at Harvard Medical School. Like, I really love making nervous system breathing accessible to people, but also you learn about muscle mechanics. You also learn about fascia and also the neurological components of stretching too. So all the things that you need to know about how to create stretch, which is again, breathing, nervous system, fascia, and muscles are in section 2, soulful science. And then the deep part is the yoga asana called deep yoga asana knowledge. Yoga is a feeling, not just a shape, is the first section. And again, I didn't know yoga was a feeling, not just a shape. When I was doing Ashtanga yoga, I was doing Marichyasana D. I had to get, the shape was get your knee on the floor, bind your hands, and that's how I got an injury. I learned it the hard way. So the first part of the book is about how I actually learned that, oh, there's a feeling to this that you need to prioritize more than the shape. And one of my favorite students, section 5, chapter 1, is called my favorite yoga student. And this person was a 14-year-old boy. He was at a boys' school in Vancouver, British Columbia, where I lived, and he couldn't see. He was blind, as I mentioned. It was really a challenge to teach. I hadn't taught a blind person before, but I had to take a knife, a little X-Acto knife, and make braille marks on the middle so we could always feel where the middle of the mat was. Otherwise, he'd kind of move around the room as he was doing the yoga practice. But he was my favorite yoga student because it's one of these moments in life where you think you're the teacher, but you actually realize you're being taught something by one of your students. And as a person who couldn't see, he didn't compare himself to others. And there was so much beauty in that to really see somebody doing a yoga asana practice that was completely liberated by, am I doing this as well as anyone else? Do I rule at this? Do I suck at this? He was completely in the moment, in his body, just experiencing yoga because of back to the title, this section title, yoga is a feeling, not just a shape. He was actually in the joy of the feeling of the yoga, of feeling a certain way, and the shape was less important. And it was so liberating for me to see that. And it allowed me, again, as I was learning to basically deprogram everything I learned about alignment, it was very liberating to see somebody in their joy like that without the comparison to others. There's another chapter in that section called The Biggest Wrong Turn for Happiness, and it's how we actually learn in yoga. There's the place inside of ourselves that's happy for no good reason. And then most people get their happiness by the approval of others. Do I have the right haircut? Am I tall enough? Am I fit enough? Do I make enough money? And am I doing this pose well enough? And if they are, then they'll be happy. If they're not, they get down on themselves. And so he was completely free of that.
I think that's such a beautiful lesson that we can all take as ones who are listening to this podcast who love to go to the asana practice. You know, many studios and yoga spaces have mirrors and things where you're sort of identified not only with yourself, but the people around you and what should I look like. But I think that's such a liberating part of your book is like actually when we start to feel the posture using all of these techniques from the inside. And you also had that example of when you did the photo shoot where you had
Yeah.
you wanted to photograph it wrong, but that was like the aesthetically pleasing one that the photographer liked. And then when you had it right for your body, maybe it looked a little bit different.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's actually good. I'm glad we're stumbling upon this topic because something that's been on my mind a little bit, to be honest with you, is I know we've gone right into the technical part of the asana practice, and I really want to really let people know, that I know it's a emotional, spiritual pursuit, yoga asana. I'm not trying to reduce it to only the physics, but actually, there's no way of separating it. That how you practice is how you live. That there's a psychology behind how you practice, and you're changing that so much when you're doing it as well. Um, so, um, ask me a question one more time.
Well,
Like I'll
actually, I didn't
rephrase it
ask
there.
you a question. It was just more
Yeah.
like a comment about that. I just think it's interesting. And also, even when you just now said about, you know, the psychology of the yogasana practice. And I'm wondering, like, within your own practice and all this years of study and research, how in your practice, and, you know, I know you have such a big blissology community of so many yogis everywhere, and you have the other three pillars we can talk about reverence, kindness, and wisdom. Like, how do we thread the science and the physiology and the kinesiology with the spiritual and the psychological, those deeper like internal aspects? Like how do you weave them together?
Yeah. Well, I mean, sure. Let me phrase it in terms of the three pillars of the book because I think this is super important as well, because there is a lot I think people are getting a sense of. By the way, I should mention that I just am releasing an online course that goes with this, so it's literally tied to the book. So you can say figure 3217. It will like start there and then bring it to life, so it's even easier to understand. Okay, but whether you're doing the course online or whether you're reading the book or both or learning from another teacher who's done this work, I really want to make clear that I'm not trying to make you a more intelligent yoga practitioner so you know more than everybody else. It's not like a better or worse thing. So I have the pillars. I put this in the very beginning of the book, right? And so you just mentioned those. So they're basically kindness, reverence, and wisdom. And so to start with reverence, that's where I want people to start from is that your yoga asana practice, yes, it's physical. One of the chapters is called is yoga physical or spiritual. And it's a really interesting question. And I don't think you can parse the two out. You can start thinking like there's so many people who thought, oh, I'm just going to go cure my hamstring or whatever, and they actually end up going, oh, yoga's so spiritual, or vice versa. They really do fuse in the asana practice, and I won't dwell too much. I think people have felt that. But really, where I want people to start is with reverence. And basically, your body is a miracle. Now, you can say, my body is a miracle of nature if you're not a religious person. And if you are a religious person, God gave me this beautiful body. I'm not here to tell you what to believe in. But for whatever reason, we are so lucky to be on the planet in this body with 36 trillion cells in our body that somehow function all together. Just sit down and think about it. And when you think about that, it will bring you to so much joy that you're like, I have to take care of this miracle. And so that moves you to the next pillar called kindness. So I want to treat myself with more kindness. And so that's the next pillar. And then when you look at the third pillar, which is wisdom, when you're educating yourself about how to do yoga asana in a way that truly makes your body last and function better with duo, and that's what I have found in my life and why I'm sharing it. I'm not out here to say any other yoga system is not good. I just really want to share what has helped me to feel incredible in my body and thousands of students, that you start to become inspired to educate yourself, but again, you want to become wiser, and wisdom is really knowledge filtered through love. We talk about sustainability. What is sustainable is what is wise. What I'm saying here is that there's one more layer to this, and that it's the way we practice is how we live. What people will find is that if you can have reverence, kindness, and wisdom toward your own self on the yoga mat, this is what the blissology symbol is all about, and tap into that place inside of you, this little circle in the middle on the mat, that's me, the next level, then you will bring that kindness and wisdom and reverence out into your personal relationships and the people in your family you're closest to your community, and out into nature. And that's really where I see the big intersection with yoga and living from our highest self and how we impact each other. So yoga of relationship, again, from ourself on the mat to our close circle of friends, to our wider circle, people we don't know, animals, and then out into nature.
That's beautiful. I love that way of
Hmm.
thinking of it. And I love the symbol also, the blissology
Yeah.
symbol. And you break that down in the book as well, which is wonderful.
You've read
I,
this in detail, huh? It's amazing, especially for the
yeah.
e-version. Yeah.
So I'm
Um,
excited to get the book version where you can
I
highlight
should
and
send you one.
pen and
I have to make
everything.
sure you
It's
get a
great.
book version one. It really is beautiful in print. I'll make
Beautiful.
sure you get one because, especially if I know you're actually reading it. Wow, that's incredible. I love it. I'm trying to find the blissology symbol. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah. That's in case people see it. It's basically a teardrop.
Yeah.
So the wisdom and reverence and kindness is here, and then you bring it out in your own self as the next level to your community and to nature is the last one. Yeah.
Nice. And I love hearing your expression and the way that you speak. And you're obviously someone that speaks thoughtfully and you think of what you say. And it just also made me think about in the book, and you've also mentioned a couple times now about literacy. And you talk in the book about stillness literacy and movement literacy. Can you just
Hmm.
talk a little bit to us about how we can work to develop those stillness and movement literacy within our practice?
Sure. Yeah, it was one of the working taglines I was working on in the book at one point is movement and stillness literacy. Do feel I actually I should tell you, one of my friends is Eric Schiffman. He wrote a book many years ago in the 90s called Moving into Stillness. And I always thought that was such a great uh, term. And in fact, I even credit him in that section. Like I just really, I wish I came up with that. but, but then I realized that, okay, if you're moving in stillness, there's actually, you can kind of sort of do anything, but when you really study how to do things, it really increases the depth with which you can move into stillness or how we can move. Um, so that's my goal for people is to help us to ba- basically let me just deal with one at a time, um, with literacy. Yeah, there's a lot. Like, this is the whole point is that how can I say it? Let me just tell you, like every page in the book took me 30 days to make on average. I did the math. Okay. Every single one of the 353 pages took me 30 days. So you can figure out how long it took. There's actually 200 pages I didn't put in there because there's just too fine brush stuff. But I'm just going to, for people who are just listening, I'm just going to do a little twist to the right with my spine. Okay. I'm just sitting in a chair. I twist to the right in my spine. I spent 1 month of my life breaking down what's involved in that, right? Where the forces go, what muscles you're using, what gets stretched, what gets engaged, what literally, I've actually studied neuroscience as well, what neurons are firing in order to do this. Like, there's a lot that's going on. And just in turning your spine to the right. And obviously, you don't have to overthink things, but when you are doing this movement under load, especially in a yoga practice, if you're not educated about how to do it, again, the whole purpose of the book, really, in a simple terms, is going to be binary, is if you're not educated, then the risk of injury is going to go up and the benefits will go down. Conversely, the more education you have, especially about how duo works, then the more benefits you get as the risk goes down. And so that's why movement and stillness, or movement literacy matters. And just one more thing I could probably say about that is that one of the things that took so long to develop the system, not even the book, but this whole system we have in Blissology, is that I spent a long time basically categorizing the material. Basically, if you're going to make, you can overwhelm people very easily with this information, but if you can put the information in principles that are easy to understand rather than just a bunch of information, it basically goes from one of these menus where there's 120 things on the menu. What do I order? I don't really have Chinese, American food, whatever. Well, I don't know what to order. It's overwhelming. And you're like, no, we just have combo A, combo B, combo C. It's just very soothing and zen on your mind. And that's been my intention, is to really put the movement principles into an easy to understand system, which I feel we've gotten. I'm really proud of that. It took a long time, a lot of tweaking formulas to get it there. So that's, I think, another part of teaching people about movement. The stillness part of it's really important too. And my original background at university was actually philosophy. And as I got deeper into the yoga practice, I started switching more to, well, anatomy first, but then I really got deep into physiology, like literally studied medical school, like how to put like do heart surgery and stuff. I went deeper down rabbit holes, but I'm never going to do that in my life. But I really wanted to understand pressures and basically what I've sat on planes before. Let me just say this. People are like, wow, you studied at medical school? I'm like, yeah, I did. They're like, well, how do you use it? I'm like, I actually use it for emotional regulation. And I
Wow.
talk to doctors and I'm like, why? Your heart's a pump. Like your lungs just pump air. What has that to do with emotions? I'm like, everything. And so basically, without going down too far that direction, what I can tell you is that the more you understand your physiology, the better you can regulate your emotions. The better you can regulate your emotions. Now, here, I don't know if everyone believes in spirit or energy or not. Let's just call it energy. The better you will be able to broadcast and receive energy that you want.
Hmm.
So
Beautiful.
that's why the stillness tools matter.
I love that. I think there's so much here, and I think we've given the listeners a lot of good nuggets and inspiration to go and get a copy of the book
Mhm.
themselves and
Yes.
to definitely find you. And where is the best place for listeners to connect with you? Like, what's coming up next with the
Go to
Blissology?
blissology.com. You can also type in, by the way, yogaoptimize.com if you want to get the book, or I should also mention the course is incredible that goes with it. I should actually mention as well, just really quickly, that if you do go to either blissology.com/yoga optimize or yogaoptimize.com, they both go to the same place, that there's actually free videos there as well, like 60, 90-second YouTube shorts that will explain a lot of this information. And I really want to make, you know, not everybody has the money, or even if they want to just start and go, oh, is this a great place? Like, do I want to keep, do we want, should we date before we get married? You know, like, and so they're really good sample platter, 90-second videos that are there as well. So definitely on blissology.com is one place. Instagram/blissology. I saw at blissology is Instagram. I'd say a couple places you could start.
Great. And Just to wrap up, I love to ask my guests three quick questions. So the first one to finish is, at this point in your life and your yoga practice, are you still curious about anything?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's funny because I really love the name of your podcast, and curiosity is everything. I'm so curious about anything and everything. In fact, just let me indirectly answer that question, and that curiosity is the biggest antidepressant in the world. True curiosity. If you really look deeply into how things work, then you will see that life is a miracle, and that will blow you away. I mean, looking out the window right now, I see these trees. There's actually a chapter in the book about how we breathe and we're connected to the trees, and just be like, wow, like how are leaves photosynthesizing right now? Oh my God, their off gas is what actually feeds us, and we eat the fruit that comes from them, or the animals that may eat the fruit, and then that creates energy and sugar for us, and we use that oxygen to combust it, and then we give off CO2, which becomes part of the tree, and you're just like, wow, this is incredible. And so just like pick anything and study it. Like on the other side of it, boredom is the opposite of curiosity, I think. And when people tell me they're bored or I'm just like, well, go learn something. And so staying curious is the key to happiness. I mean, it's blissology, and blissology and curiosity are inseparable couple.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And
Yeah.
something I really love in your book and the way that you write is you quote, you have so many quotes and like even your own quotes that are pulled out, and many wonderful words of wisdom from other people. And that's my
Yeah.
next question I always ask the guests. Is there a great saying or a great quote that has stayed with you, either of your own or someone else's, just to share with the listeners?
Yeah. Well, it might not be the most profound quote, but I just actually realized when we were talking and you made a comment about, oh, practicing yoga in the mirror when I was talking about the person who was blind. And I just realized, oh, I want to tell you something, but I didn't want to interrupt. And I just realized it was lodged on a sticky note in my mind. And it said, I mean, I do quote this a lot at the end of my yoga practice. And again, so many practices are in the mirror. And there's utility to sometimes practicing in the mirror. I'm not saying there's not, but if we're stuck on ourselves in the yoga practice like that, there's something you can think about. Is this going to seem like maybe a strange yoga quote, but it comes from Jimi Hendrix. It's a song he has, and he says, I used to live in a room full of mirrors, and all I could see was me. I take my spirit and I smash those mirrors, and now the whole world's there for me to see, right? And he said, oh, he does it to the guitar. It's really good. But and I just feel like that's such a great yoga is a feeling, not just a shape. A quote to end with, yeah.
I love that. And finally, just if you could sum up this conversation in one sentence.
Inspirational, yeah.
Nice. I agree.
Inspirational, and actually, maybe something else of like I think I have to tie gratitude in with it as well, because I will be honest with you, released the book. And then I spent all this time making the course, and the course is just coming out now. So on a scale of 1 to 10 for how well I'm doing marketing, this is 1 to 10, I would say I'm about point 0.2. So
Okay.
it's really nice to be able to share uh, what lights me up, and how, I mean, it's just been an incredible amount of time in my life. I mean, I'm 57, and I spent over half my life creating this work. And so to finally have a chance to share it with a larger audience is beautiful. I mean, I will do more marketing soon, but it's really nice to start that journey. I'm very grateful for you taking the time and sharing it with your audience.
Yes, of course. I
And
know
for everyone
everybody's
listening,
gonna
I
love
hope
it.
it lights them up that they find these tools. Because for me, one of the things I should mention is like, I feel so good. Like, I don't just mean in my yoga asana practice. I mean, at my age, at age 57, I feel so many people are like, oh, I can't do this, and then my back hurts and all this stuff. I'm like, I knock on wood, I just feel great. Like, I feel, not even that, I feel like better than I did at age 27. And I just, one of the things I say all the time is, if you found the fountain of youth in the forest, would you just hide it and be like, oh, it's just for me? Or would you be like, "Get in here. You gotta get," because it doesn't, by you letting people get in there, it doesn't mean that you don't feel it either. Happiness is best when shared, so get the people in that fountain of youth. So it's really, I really want to share these tools, because I think the yoga practice done with duo is incredible.
Amazing. Well, the gratitude is received with love and offered right back to you. I am super thankful for you taking the time. I know you're super busy, and also just like congratulations on this amazing achievement. And thank you on behalf of all the wonderful people and yogis that are going to benefit from this work. And I'm super excited to share it with my community, and just a lot of appreciation for you. I think I took my first yoga class with you back in Wanderlust in 2016 or 15
Oh,
even.
I
And
didn't know that. Okay, I
yeah,
didn't ask that part of it. Yeah.
yeah, and so it just feels so wonderful to meet you and to celebrate this work and share your book. And I'm super thankful. So thank you so much, Ian.
Oh my God, thank you, Bobby. Thank you for everyone out there. Double down on your yoga practice. It is the biggest gift that helps us. I think you've heard it both mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's such a beautiful blessing. And I just maybe on that note, want to just acknowledge past and future yogis, people who are just dedicated to treating their bodies and others with reverence, kindness, and wisdom.
Yes, I love it. That's a good bow or mic drop or however we say it.
Okay, thanks, Bobby. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider supporting the show at patreon.com/a curious yogi podcast. And please leave a review. It really helps the show reach more people. Let's stay curious, connected, and keep walking the path together. In total delight, this is Bobby signing off until next time.